NATO headquarters, and a meeting between President Andrzej Duda and the North Atlantic Alliance Secretary-General Mark Rutte. The Polish president continues to push for improvements in our country's security and defence against increasingly likely Russian aggression. I have submitted a written request to the Secretary-General regarding the upcoming summit in The Hague so that this matter will be brought to the table and that within the North Atlantic Alliance a decision be made that at least 3% of the GDP of alliance member countries be allocated to defence.
These are uncertain times, and I know some may have concerns about NATO's future, so let me be clear. The transatlantic relationship and the transatlantic partnership remains the bedrock of our alliance. President Trump has made clear its commitment of the US and his commitment personally to NATO. And it has also made clear the expectation that we in Europe must do more in terms of defence spending.
At the same time, an emergency European Council summit on European defence and support for Ukraine is also taking place in Brussels. EU leaders are discussing a plan to rearm Europe. But for Poland, it is our strong presence in NATO that has been and continues to be the greatest guarantee of security. Our security is in the North Atlantic Alliance and in Poland's bilateral cooperation with the United States. We want to be strong in the European Union, but we cannot let ourselves be carried away by what the big ones of the European Union are doing in the context of trying to create a European Union army, which is supposed to be an alternative to the North Atlantic Alliance. Our place is in NATO, because it is NATO that guarantees the defence of every inch of our territory. The defence of Poland and all other member states of the alliance was recognised as an official NATO doctrine at the North Atlantic Treaty Organization Summit in Vilnius in 2023. Leaders at the summit pledged to ensure the ability to deploy up to 30,000 troops in as little as 30 days if needed. The initiatives are aimed at increasing the number of forces that can be placed under NATO command, guaranteeing the higher readiness of forces in member states, and adjusting both forces and capabilities to defend specific geographical areas, while NATO will continue to support battle group efforts in Eastern Europe. NATO will not be persuaded to make concessions. Work to change NATO's defence doctrine and extend full protection to the entire territory of Poland from the first day of a possible conflict began as early as the 2016 NATO summit in Warsaw, a few months after Law and Justice took power. In 2023, the alliance officially approved the measures proposed by the Law and Justice government and President Andrzej Duda. Every inch of NATO land will be defended. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the change, and NATO's defence plans provide for this change of transition to deterrence by preventing access, that is, they will not enter. They will be stopped immediately. Earlier, during the civic platform PSL government, 629 organisational units of the Polish army were abolished. Poland's government at the time dealt a particular blow to the eastern part of the country. Attention, attention. Tusk's government was ready to give up half of Poland in the event of war. The plan for the use of armed forces approved by the Minister of National Defence at the time, Klitsch, assumed that the independent defence of the country would last a maximum of 2 weeks, and after 7 days the enemy would reach the right bank of the Vistula River. Documents emphatically show that Lublin, Rzeszów and Łomża could have been the Polish Bucha. Law and Justice has changed that and will defend every bit of Poland. It was thanks to the efforts of Polish diplomacy at the time, during the NATO summit in Vilnius, that the alliance countries officially recognized Russia as the aggressor and greatest threat. NATO regained its Cold War-era ability to respond militarily from day one of a possible war, rather than only after weeks of preparation. Poland, on the other hand, has embarked on the largest arms purchase in its history and has increased its defence spending. It is now almost 5% of GDP. It is clear that Poland is beginning to shine in the North Atlantic Pact, and this is supported by the Polish attitude to the army, the Polish attitude to defence that differs significantly from the countries of the Western flank. The Western countries have become accustomed to this American prosperity, but they are mucking about with the Russians, and the Americans are paying for it all. Our role, position and commitment to strengthening the alliance, distinguished from other European countries, is recognised and publicly emphasised even by Donald Trump, President of the United States, NATO's strongest power.
I'm very committed to Poland. I think Poland has really stepped up and done a great job for NATO. As you know, they paid more than they had to. They are one of the finest groups of people I've ever known. I'm very committed to Poland.
These words are also followed by specifics. Some 12,000 NATO troops, including 10,000 US troops, with heavy equipment are currently stationed in Poland. Our country also regularly hosts military exercises, such as Steadfast Defender or Baltic operations with the participation of Allied troops.
Another Russian war crime in Ukraine. This time, the target was the people of Kryvyi Rih. 4 people were killed last night. The highest price is being paid by ordinary people, which is why U.S. President Donald Trump is proposing a truce.
It's time to stop this madness.
After a failure of diplomacy at the Oval Office and a vague arrangement with left-wing European politicians, the Ukrainian president now understands his mistake. He is now ready to sign an agreement with America because only America can stop Putin. The European Union would very much like to show its strength and efficiency, but for 3 years, none of these left-wing leaders have done anything to bring Ukraine closer to peace. Instead, they pump out messages, like this one from French President Emmanuel Macron, which feed anti-American sentiment.
Je veux croire que les États-Unis resteront à nos côtés.
I would like to believe that the Americans will stand shoulder to shoulder with us, but I want to be ready for a different scenario. Peace in Ukraine may not come soon, and European countries must be ready to defend themselves against possible Russian aggression. One could take these words seriously if it were not for the fact that Paris and Berlin have been fueling the Russian war machine for years, making the very Europe Macron is talking about dependent on Russian resources and Kremlin influence, all while simultaneously dismantling their own armies. This is, of course, the result of years of neglect by the same people who today tell us that they will solve these problems. For example, Ms. von der Leyen was Germany's defense minister, and today, as president of the European Commission, she lectures others on the fact that Europe should be stronger militarily. It's quite funny. What isn't funny is that these very people are determining European security today, and the coalition currently in power in Poland unthinkingly carries out the orders of Brussels and Berlin. I very much regret that the current ruling coalition is utterly clueless when it comes to arms policy issues, because those currently in power do not even conclude contracts that should have been concluded long ago, such as for the new Borsuk floating infantry vehicle. 1,000 of these Borsuks were supposed to be delivered to the Polish army. They are good and reliable Polish vehicles, manufactured at the Stalowa Wola steelworks. But Donald Tusk's government will only order 116 such machines for the Polish military. This was supposed to be a flagship project carried out by Poland. It is very important for Poland to be the manufacturer of this kind of weapon. Projects are either shut down or reduced tenfold, as is the case with these really good modern machines. 10 times fewer purchases. This is madness. There were also supposed to be South Korean K2 tanks produced in Poland, but so far, the Ministry of Defense is only talking about it. There's also a lot of ambiguity around what equipment the Polish army even has and what it is handing over to Ukraine. As recently as last November, the head of the Ministry of Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, stipulated that Poland had already given Ukraine everything it could. The rest of the equipment is only for Polish security. Now, there are reports that the government has given Kyiv up to 60 modernized T-72 tanks. I would very much like to believe that Mr. Kosiniak-Kamysz has it all calculated, that he knows what the equipment resources of the Polish army are, and does not change his mind depending on how the wind blows. It is worrying that, some time ago, he said that we did not have these donation possibilities for Ukraine. Apparently, now we do. It is good that they have been found, but only if they are not at the expense of Polish security. What is worse, the ongoing Polish presidency in the EU Council, under the leadership of Donald Tusk, does not ensure that the countries of the eastern flank are protected with defense funding. Billions of euros from the common EU coffers will flow mainly to Germany and France. Why should those who have contributed the most, like Poland, proportionally like Lithuania, like the Czech Republic, Romania, why should we now have a worse position than the rich countries of Western Europe? Tusk should set the rules of this rearming fund so that the expenses that have already been incurred can be covered. Especially as the threat is growing. The commander of the Finnish naval forces warns about increased Russian ship traffic in the Baltic and possible further provocations by the Kremlin.
Release the hostages or they'll be held to pay. This is the US president's ultimatum to Hamas and the people of Gaza. This is also Donald Trump's response to pleas from the families of Israeli citizens held by the terrorists. Since the beginning of the week, tensions have been rising between Gaza and Tel Aviv following the expiration of the first phase of the agreement between the warring parties. Now both Hamas and Israel are preparing for the next phase of the war. This is 50-year-old Ohad, kidnapped by Hamas from his home on the 7th of October 2023. After almost a year and a half of captivity, he returned to his kibbutz, this time forever. Ohad was one of 4 hostages whose bodies were handed over by the terrorists in the latest exchange. We always felt safe when you were with us. We never imagined that darkness would come in the form of hundreds of hate-filled terrorists and that it would manage to extinguish your strong and precious light. And since the 7th of October, it seems that clouds of darkness are creeping in and covering every corner. It is not known how many bodies the militants are holding. It is not known how many hostages are still alive. The families of those whose fate is still unknown are demanding stronger measures from the Israeli government to help bring their loved ones home.
I'm here because I can't sleep at night. I can't believe that there are still so many hostages there that are suffering every day, and the government does nothing to bring them back.
Last week marked the end of the first phase of Israel's agreement with Hamas. Tel Aviv now wants the release of all hostages to implement further agreements with the militants. Hamas, however, does not want to agree to this and is calling on Israel to resume talks. It treats the hostages as a bargaining chip. We emphasize here that the only way to bring back the hostages is to abide by the agreement and start negotiations immediately to start the second phase of the truce. The protesters are asking US President Donald Trump directly for help. On the streets of Israeli cities, Donald Trump is considered a hero for bringing about a ceasefire and forcing Hamas to enter negotiations.
President Trump, you can still be the savior of the hostages, the savior of Israel, of the Israeli public, of the Middle East. You are the man that could put an end to this war.
The US administration is using diplomatic channels to put pressure on Hamas, but also on the Arab governments cooperating with it. The US president has sent Hamas an unambiguous message. This is your last warning. For the leadership, now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or they will be hell to pay later. In a similar vein, representatives of the Israeli army stressed that non-cooperation will lead to another Israeli strike on Gaza, which, although hard to imagine, will be far more devastating than the last one.
Jesse Eisenberg, the world-famous actor known for his role as Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network, among others, joined the ranks of Polish citizens, receiving the official documents in New York he had been seeking since 2023. We have a new citizen, not only in Poland, but also in the European Union. I have to say that as President of Poland, I'm very happy to see people from around the world, also from across the ocean, remember about their heritage, about their ancestors who came from Poland, and they want to establish ties with our country. At the citizenship ceremony, the actor with Polish-Jewish roots began by thanking them.
Hello. First of all, dziękuję bardzo. I am so honored. As it was said, I am happy to be a European member, but I am even happier to be a citizen of Poland.
What ties does the Hollywood actor have with our country? We know that the American actor and director has Polish roots. His great-grandmother was born in Krasnystaw, which is in the Lublin region. The main thing that worked for Eisenberg here was a very personal matter in his love for our country. Jesse Eisenberg stresses that he wants to renew ties that were severed years ago.
My family had lived in this place for far longer than we've lived in New York. And of course, the history ended so tragically, but in addition to that tragedy of history is also the tragedy that my family didn't feel any connection anymore to Poland. And that saddened me and made me and confirmed for me that I really wanted to try to reconnect as much as possible.
It all started when the actor was shooting the film A Real Pain. Its plot is set in Poland. The scenes shot for this film contributed to his desire to learn more about his family's ties, as well as Poland's history. The film A True Pain was a huge success for Jesse Eisenberg as a director, as he received an Oscar nomination for it.
Wait, you're not like taking weed into Poland,
In the same production, the Best Supporting Actor award went to Kieran Culkin for his performance as Benji Kaplan. The Oscar for Kieran Culkin is a great success for Jesse Eisenberg, because Jesse Eisenberg firstly wrote the role for Culkin, directed him on the set, and on top of that, cast him in the role. Undoubtedly, Eisenberg is an artist of the highest caliber, who has not yet said his last word in Hollywood. Will his decision to accept Polish citizenship prompt others with Polish roots to take a renewed interest in the history of their ancestors? I think this can open the eyes of many people. This story shows that you can be an actor, a world-famous director, but still feel a sense of national belonging. Granting Polish citizenship to Jesse Eisenberg is an important event and proof that our homeland is still close to the hearts of people with Polish roots. It shows that the bond with the country of the ancestors can endure even after many years.